Nichts ist so verführerisch wie eine heimliche Liebe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club, the What Are You Reading? Casual get-together, and today is the Infinite Jest edition. In case you have lived under a prim rock or a mesh rock and have not heard me talking about Infinite Jest, I will just try in 30 seconds to tell you what this is about. And then we'll get right into it. I prepared a bunch of stuff, but we also have people here who may want to talk about their experience with reading it or with not reading it. Infinite Jest is a novel by David Foster Wallace that came out in 1996. It is 981 pages long, and it has 300 plus pages of footnotes. It's gigantic, and if people ask me, what is it about? I will now tell them that Infinite Jest is basically the metaverse. Why is it the metaverse? Because it contains absolutely everything, and you can completely, fully immerse yourself in it. And I will also give you $100 in cash if you can resist when you get to page 981. And you can resist turning back to page 1 and start rereading it. I will guarantee you will look at me and go like, you are crazy, Drax. If I ever make it to 981 pages to begin with, I will put this thing away or sell it or burn it or whatever. I will certainly not start reading it again. Infinite Jest, the conceit of the story is a entertainment, or what is referred to the entertainment, but it's basically an avant-garde movie. And this avant-garde movie, it's a short film made by a very famous filmmaker. And this film is basically, if you pop it into the device, this plays a little bit in the future, so we don't really know what the device is. But a playback device, you pop it in and you start watching it. And the film called Infinite Jest is so addictive that you will stop eating, drinking, and eventually breathing, and then you will die because of the incredible addictive qualities of this short film. Now, we don't know what's on the film. I know what's on the film because I read the book 3 times, and if you read it, you will also learn it, but it's a little bit of a mystery. The book is hilarious. The book is incredibly deep. There's a little bit of a trigger warning. A lot of depictions of abuse, of suicide, of violence, of course, addiction, dysfunctional families, possibly, and Dex loves this, possibly the simulation of nuclear war on a tennis court. I'm zooming the SL camera to a depiction of a character in the book called Ann Kittenplan, who is being assaulted by a tennis ball in her back. But anyway, so this is what the book is about. If you're watching this on YouTube, put in the chat if you're reading it, if you attempted to read it, and if you're reading it where you're at, if you attempted and gave up, why did you give up? Yeah, so welcome to our little get-together. I'm going to ask each one of you where you're at. Let's be brief because we have one person here who attempted to read it, and I want to know why she gave up. But Shyla, so what's happening? I know that you're reading the book.
Yes, I'm reading the book.
Currently, you're not. Currently, you're talking to me, I suppose, or us.
Currently, I am talking to you, but the book is right here. And I have to find my bookmark because I go back and read things because they're hilarious.
Yeah, the hilarity, it's the funniest book about suicide that you will ever read.
but I'm not finding it. I know I'm way past that.
Don't worry. Find your bookmark.
Oh, I'm in
Yeah?
the wrong book. I'm
Uh-oh.
reading another book, too, which I know you don't care for the idea of. Uh,
Of talking about other books when we talk about Infinite Jest, Shyla. This is sacrilegious what you're attempting to do here.
well,
What?
not even other books. I'm reading short stories too.
Oh
So,
my
um,
God. Short
I
stories.
know.
Oh my
But
God.
I'm at the pre-Whataburger training week.
Okay. So this is hilarious. Let me ask you one question. I'll ask one question each. Uh, so this is interesting to me because I'm not a sports guy at all. You love baseball, so you have that. But what I found with Infinite Jest, what is amazing, me not being a sports guy, not the least bit interested in tennis, the depiction in detail of the tennis, of the gruesome tennis training of these kids. We're talking about 14 to 17-year-olds primarily, and they're through this incredibly almost like authoritarian fascist training regime by this German guy, Stitt. How do you find these kind of depictions that maybe another writer, it would be just insanely boring to have like 100 pages of describing like routines at 5 in the morning, like training routines. Oops, I can't hear
All
Shyla.
right, I've read this part, and I don't know. I don't know what happens, but you hear stories, so I don't know what happens in reality. But I think this probably is reality, not just from what happens, but I like that he goes into the players' um, mental and emotional feeling about it.
Yeah,
And I think that adds a lot. It's one thing to just describe this happens and
describe
that
the
people are
action
not,
and yeah.
but to go into why, like, and then this lovely conversation. I don't know what you're going to read today, but these conversations they have afterwards, and the TV shows or the videos they're taught to watch, and
Oh,
all
that's
of it.
right. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. So this is really important because their coach, Gerhard Stitt, the head coach, he forces them. And also, I don't know if this is actually at like, the highest level of tennis, like pros, if they do it. I would imagine they do, that they would watch games and then analyze it. And so he makes them watch stuff over and over and over again. And we should also say that the big theme of the book, there's many themes, but one of the big one is really sort of the melancholy and the malaise of modern life, the feeling of feeling empty despite being sort of in this machine, or maybe because you're in this machine of being trained as a racehorse in the case of the tennis kids. But yeah, Shyla, thanks for mentioning that with the videos. Also, what I find hilarious is all these tennis kids in their interior monologue, they all have like their different plans, right? And so some people really want to be like huge tennis stars, and and other guys say like, I'm gonna be like middle of the road. Yeah, I'm gonna do like some tours, and like minor like boondocks, maybe at least I get paid. And then there's one guy who already knows he's not going to be a pro, he's going to become a dentist. So it's just so funny to have like these so many like stories in this montage of thoughts, who they want to be, like how are they going to deal with what they're learning at this tennis academy, which most of them have been put in by their parents, basically. I guess some have come of free will. Yeah.
Well, and some have come, because their parents were there.
Oh, that's right. So it's like second generation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Clyde is saying something important, and I'm going to address this, Clyde, in a second. Let me go to Dex and also welcome Serafina. Dex, where are you at right now? What's happening?
Hello, can you hear me good?
Yep, yep.
Okay. So I'm currently after reading the great retrospective about repairing a bed.
Oh, repairing a bed. See, because I just read Clyde. Clyde says she can't get into the book, and we'll ask her specifically because she's bored by the depiction of 14 to 17-year-olds playing tennis. Clyde, let's listen to Dex because the section of repairing a squeaking bed. This is the best you will ever. Anyway, Dex, go ahead.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, so what
Read it?
what is so funny about repairing a bed? Or is it funny? Or I mean, what the hell you're wasting your time with reading a section about a father getting really, really angry about a squeaking bed?
It's sometimes these descriptions of long descriptions are sometimes boring. But yeah, but when you get to the thoughts about the young boy who is helping his father making things, and what's happened in between, and then he's relieved back to his room, and what is happening with in his mind. About how to relate things to mathematics and all the things is sometimes really it's really interesting. I just need to say one thing I heard yesterday from a YouTube comment that was so boring but interesting.
Oh, really about the book?
Yeah, and in some cases it applies.
That is great. And actually, David Foster Wallace is one of his most famous quotes about the book is something, and I don't know it verbatim, but it's something like somebody who feels attracted to a 1,000-page book might probably has some serious loneliness issues. That's how he said about his own book. So what Dex is describing here, thank you, Dex. And let me just add two things. You're right. The way he describes from the point of view of the young boy, how his completely obsessed father is forcing the mother to haul the mattress out into the hallway because of this little squeak that he's so obsessed about. There is such attention to detail because the father, it's actually the grandfather of the main protagonist, is also acting in commercials. And to my recollection, in that scene, he comes home from a commercial shoot and he is painted white because he was doing like a pantomime thing. And then the boy who's observing his sort of irate father and the mother who is like, oh my God, rolling her eyes and let's get through with it. And then the paint is stripping off his face. I mean, this is why I personally read these kind of descriptions. And again, then the larger point, there is, of course, a point like you were hinting at, Dex, because the boy then, his interior thoughts evolve around mathematics and physics, and he grows up and he becomes this famous filmmaker and inventor. He becomes James O. Incandenza, and here in Second Life we have all these movie posters. These are all fan-made posters of his avant-garde movies, various small flames, baby pictures of famous dictators, Blood Sister, One Tough Nun. He grows up to make all these movies, and then James O. Incandenza, of course, also makes the movie Infinite Jest, which then turns out to be so addictive that it becomes a weapon to assassinate people, essentially. So, but Clyde can't get into it because she's not interested in 14 to 17-year-old boys. Now, first of all, Clyde, I don't know how old you are. I would say that's probably a healthy thing, not to be interested in 14 to 17-year-old boys. Neither am I. Um, that's not the Draxtor comedy hour. But Clyde, tell me, you have attempted to get into the book. I mean, again, and it's daunting, but talk a little bit how you got into it or where you left off, or yeah, just tell us a little more about your experience.
Okay. I have tried 3 times in the last, I suppose, 3 months even.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to a certain point and I just give up. And in fact, of those 3 attempts, I have the book here, and my bookmark is on page 93. I haven't got beyond page 93.
Yeah, but that is pretty good. You know, this is good. This is where most people had already given up by that point.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
But I mean, don't you? Okay, let me ask you. And Serafina, by the way, I'll give this is a work of fiction. It's not based. Well, every author has probably weaves in a little bit of his own experience. And Serafina, while we're talking, she's all new to the book. Look at the thing behind me. That's a character sheet of relationships between the characters, and these are just the main characters. There are so many characters, it's completely insane. But Clyde, then I would think that you got already into a little bit of a flavor of like very different sort of flavors, and not only the tennis part of it, right? Because by page 93, you get these stories about Ken Erdedy, who's waiting for his dope dealer. His entire interior monologue about like, oh, he should probably quit smoking weed. And a whole bunch of other things. Not only 14 to 17-year-old boys, I guess.
Yes. I mean, I was amused by the shit's conversation with, who was he talking to early on? Who he's sort of taken on as a acolyte. Mario? No.
Yeah, Mario's his brother, is the main character's brother. He is disabled. Sometimes
Yes.
he's being described as disfigured. Here's Mario. Here's some fan art. I'm panning to the fan art. He's a big fan of making movies. He has the camera bolted onto his head because he can't carry it. Here he is. There's fan art of the camera on his head. Yeah, Mario is a wonderful character. He's kind of the Jesus character in a sense. Everybody is very, very flawed, but Mario is kind of a saint in a sense.
Yes. So I found their conversation quite interesting.
Hmm.
Um,
Between Mario and Hal, his elder brother, because they share a room at the tennis academy. Yeah.
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 But yeah. No, I will, because it's been a few weeks since I tried. So, maybe I'll try again. I will try again. And I'm ever so sorry. I'm going to have to leave. I've got a slight problem here in RL. I'm glad I made it here. I'm glad I wore my tennis outfit in homage.
Well, Clyde, thank you for coming. This is exactly what David Foster Wallace was so concerned about, the shortage of attention span and people hopping between things and going to a book club meeting and then leaving. In the book, it's all AA meetings. It's not book meetings. But Clyde, if you want to be healed, I'm here for you. I'm your healer. Just come back.
Thank you. I'll try the 12, whatever it is, plan. Enjoy, everybody. Enjoy. I'm going.
Okay, bye, Clyde. Now, it's interesting, and let me just say there is a wonderful video on YouTube of a reader from Uruguay, and she starts off with saying, I tried Infinite Jest 4 times, and I couldn't get into it, and then I finally got into it, and she tells about how she got into it and how she finished it. And the the finishing thing, we're all, again, I say this every week, I feel like the whole finishing thing is just like so forced upon us. Um, we're so conditioned to judge ourselves and others by sort of the accomplishments. And this is interesting because the book is an accomplishment, and you feel accomplished when you finish it, but you want to read it again. And so the book is about the partially about the emptiness of this sort of perfectionism, or the pursuit of this excellence that they have in the tennis academy, and how this may not result in happiness, or actually having fun. So those questions, they're not definitively answered. Wallace explores it. I'm just looking at what Dex wrote. Dex wrote, spoiler alert, AA works. This is another thing. I mean, the book is full of questions, right? So I have no experience with AA, but the author David Foster Wallace had. He was actually in AA, and we know from the many interviews that a lot of the characters in the book are based on characters that he encountered in a halfway house. And the AA is not uncritically embraced in the book. It goes back and forth and back and forth. And one of the wonderful things about the book that I really like is that he sometimes seems to poke fun and kind of destroying the simplicity of AA, the cultish nature of it. Shiloh, we talked about this. But then again, there are characters and situations in the book where AA really helps them. So in that sense, the book is so non-binary, so nuanced, right? So not black and white, and that's in an abstract sense what I appreciated.
Right, because that's what life is like, right? Life is gray.
Well, not according to Elon Musk and the techies. Life is binary, Shiloh. Didn't you know? It's just zeros and ones. Yeah, exactly. And every story is different. And I mean, the other thing about the book, of course, people get maybe afraid of all these thousands of characters, but that was a thing that Wallace wanted to express, is that every life matters, every character matters. And he's on the record also in one of those many interviews about what he didn't like is sort of a hero-based structure, and sort of the side characters, or the figurants as he calls them, they are sort of dismissed. And that makes Infinite Jest, of course, a little bit challenging and complex, but it also makes it incredibly rich because every single character is super important, Shiloh, right? And we don't know if they reoccur even. And so when we're sort of conditioned to reading a book like, oh, I got to pay attention to this person because he may reoccur, and then they never reoccur, they don't come back, or they come back 500 pages later, and it somehow ties in. So it challenges our concept.
I don't. Yes, okay. I agree. It challenges the concepts in a way,
Mm-hmm.
but I think maybe more so because life is gray. So what works for one person is not going to work for every person.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And this is what he brings out. So maybe we live, and maybe even more right now, in a very black and white society.
We do.
But I like the book because it leads into the gray.
It brings the
Right,
color
and
back, or the tones, exactly, or the shades of gray. You're absolutely right, and I think that's what he was again worried about, is that also commercial entertainment, which he himself said many times, he was addicted to it. He said he doesn't have a TV because if he had a TV, and again, he wrote this book in the early 90s, came out in 96. He said, if I had a TV, I would watch it 24/7. So he took he was not, he expressed the I'm slightly going off what you're saying. You're saying something slightly different with the nuance. But I think it ties in with his warning against sort of commercial entertainment, because I think he stipulates that this is not only super addictive, but it also erases nuance. And that's, I don't want to talk about it today. We'll talk about it next time. I'll prepare something about AI, because I think AI is going to accelerate that notion. But yeah. Sorry, I'm occupying the conversation again, just like hell in Condensa. Actually, he doesn't talk much, I guess. Shyla, sorry, did I interrupt? Dex? Serafina? What does Serafina say?
She doesn't have voice. She's watching on YouTube.
Yeah, no. I'm looking at the. Serafina says, I think the writer tried to deliver his style directly from the mind of this young boy using this way of communication. See, Serafina, thank you for saying that. And yeah, and the one thing about which can be a little hard to follow for people like me, is I like reading classical style with order and method. But this is an idea I got just by looking at the back of the book in front of Draxtor right now. Open one. I might be so wrong. Serafina, thank you. Don't apologize. Get the book, because you're onto something here. And let me just say, if I were sort of the bookseller here in this little bookstore, and you come in and you say, I like, I like classical style, order and method, and I know who's the narrator, you will love this book, because there's incredible structure to it, a incredibly rigorous structure that you will not discover the first time round, but the second time. It gets more enjoyable the more you read it. And the point of view changes all the time. This is actually a kind of a mystery where there is discussion groups and Reddit threads by the millions where people talk about who is actually the narrator of Infinite Jest. I don't want to spoil it, but I am going to. The narrator might be Hell in Condensa's father, who committed suicide by putting his head into the microwave. Boom! Big spoiler. So he might come back as a ghost and he might narrate this story, because he might be omniscient. I don't know. But yeah.
Ghosts are often on missions, I think.
Hmm?
I think ghosts are often on missions.
Would
It's like to take care of unfinished business, or to bring reality to things. So that would be a perfect way to have that narrated, I think.
well, also, the book is also about communication, or the inability to communicate of the father, James in Condensa, the famous filmmaker. Here he is. Sometimes he's called himself, sometimes he's called the Mad Stork. And he is the father of Hell, and they have issues communicating with each other. And then when James dies of suicide, maybe this is a theory on Reddit. Maybe he created the movie Infinite Jest to communicate with his son after he died. So there's a million theories. I'm going to share a tiny little anecdote of the book. There's a chapter, I think Shiloh already read it, maybe Dex as well, where the father, James, again, his son doesn't talk to him. So one day his son, when he's 11 years old, gets a call from the dentist office and say, you got to come to the dentist for your, to be like, you check on your teeth. He goes down to the dentist office, the 11-year-old Hal, and the dentist starts asking him all sorts of questions. And then it turns out the dentist is his father disguised as a dentist so he can communicate with his 11-year-old who doesn't talk to him. Anyway, that's it's one of my favorite scenes, I guess. It's so quiet. Should I read something?
Yes.
Now, before I read, I want to, and I know I'm violating my own rule. Well, first of all, let's say the music that the people on YouTube heard was from this cassette here. Ambient music for Infinite Jest. You can buy that on Bandcamp. It's ambient music. It's all instrumental. I think it's pretty damn awesome. You can buy the downloads. I bought the physical cassette. It's really good. And the music that was in the intro was the song was called Tennis Drills, 6 a.m. And this I also just want to show it. This is the Polish translation. Dex, can you please pronounce the Polish translation title?
Niewyczerpany żart.
Okay. Niewyczerpany żart. One more time.
Niewyczerpany żart.
Niewyczerpany żart. That was good.
Very good.
Niewyczerpany żart. Okay, so before I read, a person that I held dear, a writer, passed away last week. I'm talking about Paul Auster. I know we're talking about Infinite Jest, but Paul Auster, people may know him from the New York trilogy, which I read when I was 18. And Paul Auster passed away. And yeah, I wrote a little essay on my Substack. So I know we're talking about Infinite Jest, but we need to briefly address Paul Auster because this is the New York trilogy. This is the German translation that I read in 89. And this is his latest book before he passed away. 2017 this came out. It's called 4321. It's big. And I started reading it. It's magnificent. I should read something else because we have some really high profile people come up on the book club, like high profile guests. I should read their work. But I started reading this and then I was like, oh wow, there's some relationship to Infinite Jest. So I'm gonna I put it side by side. This is my worn copy of Infinite Jest. 4321, I bought this on eBay for €1, so that's why it's a little bit beaten up. And I was like, wow, how many pages does 4321 have? Let's open it up. It has 981 pages. And you know, Infinite Jest has 981 pages. Is this a coincidence, people? Is this a coincidence, I ask you? Hello? No, it's not. There's something happening. Somebody is communicating from the grave. Anyway, Dex doesn't think so. Dex does not believe in magic. He believes in numbers. He's a binary fella. No, but I thought this was just awesome. But anyway, now
We need paranormal investigators.
oh yeah. So
Yeah.
I chose to read, and this is a lengthy, hilarious section that I think people will laugh. Let me see actually what Serafina wrote. She said, absolutely love to read it. I enjoy autobiographies mixed with humor. This is certainly not an autobiography. But it has, anyway, bringing a book in whole together is such a hard task. I congratulate this brave writer. Would it be great to see what he would write his next book? He will not write a next book because he's unfortunately diseased. But what you said here, bringing a book together is such a hard task. I congratulate this writer. Thank you for saying this, Serafina, because this is something above the enjoyment that this particular book brings me, or also, Paul Auster's work or whatever. Writing something that is long but has structure, something that expands over a long period of time, whatever many pages. And again, Shyla, I'm teasing you with the short stories. I'm amazed by short stories as well. I mean, it's amazing how people can build worlds in in a handful of pages. It's a different form. But to have something this long and complex and coherent is just to me like build it. It's the same feeling that I get like when I look at great architecture, because that's what it is. It is architecture. It is magnificent um, architecture. That that's how I feel about these books. And I would also note that it's
Cat,
yeah. Go ahead, Shala. Always interrupt me,
I
please.
just, I'm sorry, but
No, do.
short stories are a different form and they are very tight. But I would argue, actually, that this is very tight. It's long,
Yeah,
but it's tight. And I thought I remember either this one or the other one where he started out with many more pages,
yeah.
and this is really tight.
The original, yeah. I don't have the number here, but the original draft of Infinite Jest was a lot longer. And I absolutely agree with you. People go like, "Oh my God, this is so big." People watch, and again, I don't want to like talk bad about people, but when people complain about this, or and then in the context, I don't have time. Why would I? And then people watch or binge watch Netflix shows 40, 50 hours. Those are also very, very sprawling sort of narratives. And I think this large form is super important for it's almost like besides the joy and the fun that we have with it, I would also argue it's actually, and again, it's probably turning people off, it's probably really healthy for you. Just like an AA meeting. No, it's healthy for you, for your brain to engage with something that has to be comprehended in its largesse, in its magnitude, in its scope. And that's again makes it to me similar to like a piece of architecture or a city or explore a city. I'm just thinking about Krakow because Dex was in Krakow recently, or tennis, right? Tennis is back and forth, but there's complexity. Everything can be complex. But like Serafina said, she congratulates this brave writer. Absolutely. Again, it's bravery to embark on this and then go through with it and come out the other end. Um, and in the case of this particular book that we're talking about, Wallace, who again is no longer with us because he couldn't bear life for himself, he wrote something so significant about life that he could not continue living because he ended it. He chose to end it. But he gave us something of incredible kindness and tenderness. And so I'm going to read. Let me move this slightly over here. So what I'm going to read is the introduction of Enid House in the book. I actually don't know what page it is because this is of the ebook. But this is when Enid House is described. What Enid House is, a halfway house, and this describes where Enid House is situated. And I put this map up here. This is a map that I got from a fan site. And you can see here number 9 is Enid House Drug and Alcohol Recovery House. And there's a bunch of other buildings. These buildings here. And in the section that I'm going to read, these buildings are being described because this is a former Navy hospital that is no longer in use. And some of these buildings are used by other groups. These big fans that you can see here, they're also mentioned once. This is sort of the meta plot that I don't want to get into, which is also hilarious about these fans. But just keep in mind that the Enid House Drug and Alcohol Recovery House is situated downhill from the tennis academy. And the names that are going to be mentioned is Don Gately. Don Gately is the assistant manager, and Pat Montesian is the director of Enid House. Don Gately is a small-time criminal who was in jail, and he got out on probation, and he's in the house managing things and cooking meatloaf. Okay. Everybody ready? Here we go. Oops, I got to bring up my book here. Here it is. Enid House Drug and Alcohol Recovery House is the 6th of 7 exterior units on the grounds of an Enfield Marine Public Health Hospital complex that, from the Enfield Academy's hilltop, resembles 7 moons orbiting a dead planet. The hospital building itself, a VA facility of iron-colored brick and steep slate roofs, is closed and cordoned, bright pine boards nailed across every possible access and aperture, with really stern government signs about trespassing. Enfield Marine was built during either World War II or Korea, when there were ample casualties and much convalescence. About the only people who use the Enfield Marine complex in a VA-related way now seem to be wild-eyed old Vietnam vets in fatigue jackets, de-sleeved to make vests, or else drastically old Korea vets who are now senile or terminally alcoholic, or both. The hospital building itself, stripped of equipment and copper wire, defunct Enfield Marine stays solvent by maintaining several smaller buildings on the complex grounds, buildings the size of like prosperous homes, which used to house VA doctors and support staff, and leasing them to different state-related health agencies. Each building has a unit number that increases with the unit's distance from the defunct hospital, and with its proximity along a rutted cement roadlet that extends back from the hospital's parking lot to a steep ravine that overlooks a particularly unpleasant part of Brighton, Massachusetts, Commonwealth Avenue and its Green Line tracks. Unit 1, right by the lot in the hospital's afternoon shadow, is leased by some agency that seems to employ only guys who wear turtlenecks. The place counsels wild-eyed Vietnam vets for certain very delayed stress disorder, and dispenses various pacifying medications. Unit 2, right next door, is a methadone clinic overseen by the same MA division of substance abuse services that licenses Enid House. Customers for the services of Units 1 and 2 arrive around sunup and form long lines. The customers for Unit 1 tend to congregate in like-minded groups of 3 or 4 and gesture a lot and look wild-eyed and generally pissed off in some broad geopolitical way. The customers for the methadone clinic tend to arrive looking even angrier as a rule, and their early morning eyes tend to bulge and flutter like the eyes of the choked, but they do not congregate, rather stand or lean along number 2's long walkway's railing, arms crossed, alone, brooding, solo acts, standoffish, 50 or 60 people all managing to form a line on a narrow walkway, waiting for the same small building to unlock its narrow front door, and yet still managing to appear alone and standoffish, is a strange sight. And if Don Gately had ever once seen a ballet, he would, as an Enid House resident, from his sun-up smoking station on the fire escape outside the 5-man bedroom upstairs, have seen the movements and postures necessary to maintain this isolation in unison as balletic. The other big difference between Units 1 and 2 is that the customers of number 2 leave the building deeply changed, their eyes not only back in their heads, but peaceful, if a bit glazed, but anyway, in general, just way better put together than when they arrived. While number 1's wild-eyed patrons tend to exit number 1 looking even more stressed and historically aggrieved than when they went in. When Don Gately was in the very early part of his Enid House residency, he almost got discharged for teaming up with a bad news methadone addict from New Bedford and sneaking out after curfew across the EMPHH complex in the middle of the night to attach a big sign on the narrow front door of number 2's methadone clinic. The sign said, Closed until further notice by order, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The first staffer at the methadone clinic doesn't get there to open until 8 a.m. And yet it's been mentioned how number two's customers always begin to show up with twisting hands and bulging eyes at like dawn to wait. And Gately and the speed freak from New Bedford had never seen anything like the psychic crises and near riot among these semi-ex junkies, pallid blade slender chain-smoking homosexuals, and bearded bruiser types in leather berets, women with mohawks and multiple sticks of gum in upscale trust-funded fritterers with shiny cars and computerized jewelry who'd arrived, as they've been doing like hyper-conditioned rats for years, many of them, arrived at sunup with their eyes protruding and with Kleenexes at their noses and scratching their arms and standing on first one foot and then the other doing basically everything but truly congregating, wild for chemical relief, ready to stand in the cold exhaling stream for hours for that relief, who'd arrived with the sun and now seemed to be informed that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was suddenly going to withdraw the prospect of that relief until, and this is what really seemed to drive them right over the edge out there in the lot, until further notice. Apeshit has rarely enjoyed so literal a denotation. At the sound of the first window pane breaking, and the sight of a blown-out old whore trying to hit a leather-vested biker with an old pre-metric grass grows by inches but it dies by feet sign from number two's clinic's pathetic front lawn, the methadone addict began laughing so hard that she dropped the binoculars from the Enid house upstairs fire escape where they were watching at like 6:30 a.m., and the binoculars fell and hit the roof of one of the Enid House's counselor's cars right below in the little roadlet with a ringing clunk just as he was pulling in. The counselor, his name was Kelvin Thrust, and he was 4 years sober and a former NYC porn actor who'd gone through the house himself and now took absolutely zero in terms of shit from any of the residents. And his pride and joy was his customized that, and the binoculars made rather a nasty dent, and plus they were the house manager's amateur ornithology binoculars and had been borrowed out of the back office without explicit permission, and the long fall and impact didn't do them a bit of good, to say the least, and Gately and the methadone addict got pinched and put on full house restriction and very nearly kicked out. The addict from New Bedford picked up the emanating needle a couple of weeks after that anyway and was discovered by a night staffer simultaneously playing air guitar and polishing the lids of all the donated canned goods in the house pantry way after lights out. Stark naked and sheened with meth sweat, and after the formality of a urine, she was given the old administrative boot. Over a quarter of incoming Enid House residents get discharged for a dirty urine within their first 30 days, and it's the same all over other Boston halfway houses. And the girl ended up back in New Bedford, and then within like 3 hours of hitting the streets, got picked up by New Bedford's finest on an old default warrant and sent to Framingham Women's for a 1 to 2 bid, and got found one morning in her bunk with a kitchen-rigged shiv protruding from her privates and another in her neck. In a thoroughly eliminated personal map, and Gately's individual counselor, Jean M., brought Gately the news and invited him to see the methadone addict's demise as a clear case of there but for the grace of God, goeth D.W. Gately. Unit 3, across the roadlet from number 2, is unoccupied but getting reconditioned for lease. It's not boarded up, and the Enfield Marine maintenance guys go in there a couple days a week with tools and power cords and make a god-awful racket. Pat Montesian hasn't yet been able to find out what sort of group misfortune number 3 will be devoted to servicing. Unit 4, more or less equidistant from both the hospital parking lot and the steep ravine, is a repository for Alzheimer's patients with VA pensions. Number 4's residents wear jammies 24/7, the diapers underneath giving them a lumpy and toddlerish aspect. The patients are frequently visible at number 4's windows in jammies, splayed and open-mouthed, sometimes shrieking, sometimes just mutely open-mouthed, splayed against the windows. They give everybody at Enid House the holding fan toads. One ancient retired Air Force nurse does nothing but scream, "Help!" for hours at a time from a second-story window. Since the Enid House residents are drilled in a Boston AA recovery program that places great emphasis on asking for help, the retired shrieking Air Force nurse is the object of a certain grim amusement sometimes. Not 6 weeks ago, a huge stolen "Help Wanted" sign was found attached to number 4 siding right below the retired shrieking nurse's window. And number 4's director was less than amused and demanded that Pat Montesian determine and punish the Enid House residents responsible. And Pat had delegated the investigation to Don Gately, and though Gately had a pretty good idea who the perps were, he didn't have the heart to really press and kick ass over something so much like what he would have done himself when new and cynical, and so the whole thing pretty much blew over. Unit number 5, kitty corner across the little street from Enid House, is for catatonics and various vegetable-ish fetal position mental patients subcontracted to a Commonwealth outreach agency by overcrowded LTIs. Unit number 5 is referred to, for reasons Gately's never been able to pinpoint, as the Shed. It is understandably a pretty quiet place, but in nice weather, when it's more portable, inmates are carried out and placed in the front lawn to take the air. Standing there propped up and staring, they present a tableau it took Gately some time to get used to. A couple newer residents got discharged late in Gately's treatment for tossing firecrackers into the crowd of catatonics on the lawn to see if they could get them to jump around or display affect. On warm nights, one long-limbed, bespectacled lady who seems more autistic than catatonic tends to wander out of the shed, wrapped in a bedsheet, and lay her hands on the thin, shiny bark of a silver maple in number 5's lawn. Stands there touching the tree until she's missed at bed check and retrieved. And since Gately graduated treatment and took the offer of a live-in staffer's job at Enid House, he sometimes wakes up in his staff cellar bedroom down by the payphone and tonic machine and looks out the sooty ground-level window by his bed and watches the catatonic touching the tree and her sheet and glasses illuminated by Commonwealth Avenue's neon, or the weird sodium light that spills down from the snooty tennis prep school overhead on its hill. He'll watch her standing there and feel an odd, chilled empathy he tries not to associate with watching his mother pass out on some piece of living room chintz. Unit number 6. Right up against a ravine on the end of the rutted road's east side is Enid House Drug and Alcohol Recovery House. 3 stories of whitewashed New England brick, with the brick showing in patches through the whitewash, a mansard roof that sheds green shingles, a scabrous fire escape at each upper window, and a back door no resident is allowed to use, and a front office around on the south side with huge protruding bay windows that yield a view of ravine Weeds and the unpleasant stretch of Commonwealth Avenue. The front office is the director's office, and its bay windows, the house's single attractive feature, are kept spotless by whatever residence gets front office windows for their weekly chore. The mansard's lower slope encloses attics on both the male and female sides of the house. The attics are accessed from trap doors in the ceiling of the second floor and are filled to the beams with trash bags and trunks, the unclaimed possessions of residents who've up and vanished sometime during their term. The shrubbery all around Enid's house first story looks explosive, ballooning in certain unpruned parts, and there are candy wrappers and styrofoam cups trapped throughout the shrub's green levels, and gaudy homemade curtains billow from the second story's female side's bedroom windows, which are open what seems like all year round. Unit 7 is on the west side of the street's end, sunk in hill shadow and teetering right on the edge of the eroding ravine that leads down to the avenue. Number 7 is in bad shape, boarded up and unmaintained and deeply slumped at the red roof's middle, as if shrugging its shoulders at some pointless indignity. For an Enid House resident, entering number 7, which can easily be entered through the detachable pine board over the old kitchen window, is cause for immediate administrative discharge, since Unit 7 is infamous for being the place where Enid House residents who want to secretly relapse with substances sneak in and absorb substances and apply Visine and Chlorets and then try to get back across the street in time for the 11:30 curfew without getting pinched. Behind Unit 7 begins far and away the biggest hill in Enfield, Massachusetts. The hillside is fenced off limits, densely wooded, and without sanctioned path. And that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed that. This is interesting because I don't know. It's awesome, and we live in a day and age of trigger warnings, and I think trigger warnings are very apt and important. And there's one critique about Infinite Jest about some language that is a little derogatory towards certain people. And I don't want to get into it too much. It's certainly something that can be discussed. I am of the school of thought that what Wallace was trying to do, especially with Gately, who is a wonderful guy, one of the heroes. I mean, everybody's a hero, but Gately comes from the streets. He's a tough guy. He comes from an extremely dysfunctional, abusive family situation, and he was not really exposed to, let's say, LGBTQ people or others, and so he sometimes uses language that might be seen as inappropriate. But it's very much in line with his character, I think. And also here, the way they make fun of the catatonics. I mean, it's incredibly mean to want to throw firecrackers at people who are catatonic or who are doped up with antipsychotic medication. But the way he describes it is so, the whole context is so not mean, I feel. Shyla, what are your thoughts about this? If you just take this out of context, right? If you take this out of context, people go like, "Oh my God, they're torturing this poor old nurse, putting the help wanted sign underneath." But yeah.
I think the firecrackers part is cruel. I think it's intended maybe to express that cruelness. But I think it also, on that realistic scale, like so many things in this book I've had experiences with. And that one, there was a mental health hospital in San Pedro, so you know where this is.
Mm-hmm.
And
Long Beach area, south of.
They decided, near the Queen Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided to do a film shoot there. And they got the permits and everything. And what they did was they flew around that hospital with helicopters and shot off blanks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't understand the insensity of society. Like somebody should have said when all that was coming down, no. And I think that's kind of what this message is to me. There's no one there saying, no, this isn't okay. Because it's not. But it's in the book, I think, to remind us in a way that this kind of thing happens.
Exactly.
And sometimes, and we don't think about it.
But it's also a novel or a short story or any written, the literary form, and including poetry right now as well. The way the written form can provide context by building worlds is just uniquely, and I would again, as I always argue, much more than the audiovisual form. Um, or movies, if I say audiovisual to be a little broader, but it's just say movies or TV or whatever, narrative TV, can provide a context um, where this stuff is situated. And if you don't decontextualize it, you will get enormous insight into the human condition, and you will be able to reflect your own life through the lens of these stories and these characters. And this book is a prime example for it. Even if you have never played tennis, even if your mother was not stuck one time in a Greyhound bus in the toilet, and then got stuck in the toilet, and her butt was hanging out of the bus window because the toilet got loose. It's another thing that happens. If you are willing to engage with or to follow the author and trust the author that he arranges these things that we're now, pulling out of context by reading excerpts, talking about stuff, or me talking about the mother with the butt hanging out of the window, in an isolated fashion, this makes not only zero sense, this also sounds juvenile, possibly stupid, offensive. Essentially, what Wallace was warning about, or what he was concerned about, seeing the advent of ubiquitous entertainment, that people would numb themselves with entertainment that is decontextualized, and so he created this work as the medicine, with all that stuff in it, but also incredibly contextual. And again, people will watch this and go like, yeah, Draxtor, that's about every good novel is like that. Duh. I know, folks, but we're not talking about every novel. We're talking about this one. Dex is typing. Dex, you can continue typing, or you can also talk and interrupt me. Please interrupt me. Hello, Moon.
Okay, I can interrupt you. No problem.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, somebody interrupted me here, Dex. Oh no. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think in this description you read, the best place, the best thing is in Polish is also the third the description of the third unit, which the last sentence, which is in Polish. Pat Montesian jeszcze nie wie, jaki rodzaj zbiorowego nieszczęścia będzie obsługiwany w numerze 3. This is great.
Ah. Oh, I thought you're gonna read this extremely long sentence about the where they put the that it's closed. Ah, you just read basically Pat Montesian hasn't yet been able to find out what sort of group misfortune number 3 will be devoted to servicing.
Right.
Yeah, that's just... Oh, thank you for pointing this out, Dex. Again, this is for people who love wordsmiths, right? I mean, magicians with words. It's delicious. It's just such the craft of writing, and I know there sometimes is an accusation, or that Wallace, or specifically in this book, he is showing off. I mean, this is really kind of a weird trope that is totally not true, and there's consensus among readers, regular normal readers, and also scholars alike, that he was just a master, right? I mean, you don't say to a master craftsman, you don't look at a table that is made by a master carpenter, and you go like, wow, this is an amazing tape. You don't say, well, look at that carpenter, what a show off. But somehow we do that with art, and he has been accused in some circles, and it's just bullshit. I mean, Dex, thank you for picking out that sentence. I mean, there are sentences, and Shyla brought some sentences to us, and Moon here, who is a native German speaker, the German translation is so good. It's just wonderful. So we gotta wrap it up, folks. Let's see. Serafina was typing something. Let me look at that. No. Please type. Find it unfortunate that Wallace lived before his time. If he was alive in our times, he could make fantastic script. I think my personal opinion, of course, he's a genius material for cinema, even maybe as a director. He's a genius critic of modern times as a philosopher. Wallace was a double major in philosophy and in English literature. I think he would have completely turned down any job in film. But ironically, or maybe not ironically, he also was very vocal about irony, saying that irony is a cage that traps people. I'm going to elaborate on that maybe next time. But all this fan art that we have around this room, of course, one of the main characters in the book is a famous film director. And the book is, in that sense, also not because of the plot of James O. Incandenza here, or his movies, the Medusa versus the Odalisque. The book is also extremely cinematic in the sense that it just creates incredible cinematic scenes and dialogue. But I think I would speculate that Wallace, with where he stood, warning us of being addicted to ubiquitous entertainment, he would have stayed away from the film industry, from the commercial film industry for sure, because that's really what the book is about. It's a warning, and the book is, by the way, set in the future, in our past. Arguably, it starts at about 2009, and of course, the world that we live in today. And I'm going to mention TikTok, but it's not TikTok. TikTok was just accelerating where the train was headed anyways, which is shorter and shorter and less context, and shorter and less context, and just a constant dopamine machine gun, basically. Oh yeah, he was. We can talk about him as a person maybe next time, and maybe play some clips as well. But no, Serafina, you're not. But this is not this is not a test. We very much appreciate people who are interested in this work. So your comments here are very much appreciated, and you made some. It's actually quite nice. It makes me feel good that what you're saying hits the right points, and that makes me feel like I'm not totally incoherent in how I and the others are laying out what this book is about, because there is some very deep philosophy, and we know that Dex's favorite characters are Maraf and Steepley, who are constantly talking about free will. Does free will exist or not?
On sale now for $7.95.
Free will? That's cheap.
Yeah, I know.
Are you sure you're looking at
All right.
Free Will or not Free Willy?
I'm sorry.
For newcomers,
maybe the
yeah.
Maybe the La Soupe à Pois.
What?
That price.
What? Say that again.
La Soupe à Pois.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding. I'm not following.
Yeah, the Steepley and Matt talking about the soup.
Oh, okay. See, now I have to I need some more hints where this is at, because see, this is, I would like to be that scholar, or like when the translators were here, that would immediately be able to say, oh, that's on page, page XY, blah, 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 page 333 or whatever. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Steepley's father was addicted to MASH, and then he died. But yeah, let's come to a close for today, and let's meet soon. MASH, the TV show Mesh. No, not Mesh. He was a primer. So thank you for coming, Dex, Serafina, Moon, Shyla, and earlier with Clyde. Wonderful time, and we're getting into the groove, and I need to be interrupted, and I thank you for interrupting me, because otherwise I'll keep going. It's terrible. It's a disease. I'm not well. I am well, but yeah, that's Infinite Jest Edition. What are you reading? And if people want to come into our secret support group, they have to IM me and I'll invite you in. Other than that, next week we have Rick Harsh coming. I don't know. Hold on. Do I have the image? Who is Rick Harsh? Rick Harsh is an American expat. He lives in Slovenia, and he has a small press that he operates out of his bedroom. And he is just an incredible guy, that he just started this independent publisher called Corona Samizdat. And he will be here next week at the regular time at the 12 o'clock hour. Please refer to the calendar. I prepared a bunch of stuff about AI, but we'll talk about it next time. Okay? Last words? Serafina is intrigued by the writer. That is very good. Happy to be introduced. She loves philosophy. It's the book for you. There's a wonderful interview. If you look on YouTube and you just look, interview with David Foster Wallace, German TV. He gave a long interview for German TV, and it's uncut on YouTube. It was never broadcast in Germany in its entirety, but that interview is amazing. And he talks about very profoundly, and you get a sense of this sort of awkward, shy, wonderfully kind person. Thank you, guys. I'm going to wrap it, and I'll see you next week. This, by the way, is Madame Psychosis with the veil, and Shyla sitting in the red car. And we don't know what that means. You have to read it to find out. Okay, goodbye.
We're all thrown into it, one way or the other. We all try to steer it as straight as we can. Sometimes we collide with each other. Who is to blame? so many ways. Just a little trick to keep our heads above water. But now I'm not afraid anymore. Life